spotty and looking at us with great curiosity and actually not too much anxiety at all. So one thing I really love about a giraffe on foot is their natural defense mechanism is to stand and stare at you, which means you can actually really enjoy a sighting with them. Best and closest sighting I've ever had with a giraffe was on horseback. So one thing about being on horseback that you won't get with any other mode of viewing animals, because they don't see the human shape. They don't see you in the way that they do when you're on foot, and the vehicle obviously does make a noise and it might frighten them in some way. But horses don't scare them at all, and you can actually get very, very close. And I remember once in the Kalahari sitting with, must have been 10 or so giraffe, all standing in a line staring at us, and us on our horses looking back at them. There he is. Hello, big boy. How are you doing? I wonder which male this is. You sometimes get to know the individual giraffe. You sort of become familiar with their injuries, their spot patterns, anything like that. Marks on their bodies. All sorts of things that are recognizable. I don't want to scare him. I'm just shifting ever so slightly into the sun where it's nice and warm. Hey, boy. Our Tristan the other day on bushwalk managed to get very, very close up to a group of giraffe, or a journey of giraffe. It is possible to do. And sometimes what happens is if you get a little bit closer and then you duck down, they come and investigate to see what you are. I wonder if there's more. I don't think so. I think it's just him. We actually knew he was here for a couple of reasons. One, we heard him, or at least he moved away from us when we first walked through, and we heard the crashing of the cracking of the branches and the thud of his hooves. But if we come a little bit further back, and I'll come back to him so that we can answer some questions on him that you will be sending through on #SafariLive on Twitter. I'm going to just show you something here. If we go a little bit further back up the hill. So we heard the sound, and initially a giraffe can sound very much like an elephant moving through the vegetation. But the dead giveaway was, it's a bit further up, sorry Ferg. Well, here's one giveaway. These are his tracks over here. Here's his giraffe track, and there's his dung, which falls from a great height and therefore is always very, very scattered. So he walked along here and then he turned off and he went back on himself. And just have a look at this. Look how big his foot is. There's a good track. Look how big his feet are. That's his foot. Pointing the other way, but this is his entire track. Absolutely massive foot. There you go. Big bull giraffe. Now, Adele, you want to know, let's go back to our giraffe now, see if maybe he's come out into the open to see where we've gone. Adele, you want to know if giraffe each have unique spot patterns. They do. Completely different. Just like leopards, just like zebra have unique stripes, giraffe have unique spot patterns. So you could, and a lot of our viewers do, I know there's quite a few, and there's groups on Facebook where they've identified individual giraffe. Now there he is over there. Look, he's completely relaxed now. He's having breakfast. They're not concerned about us at all. And almost always quite a safe animal to approach on foot. You get rare, very rare incidents where giraffe will actually respond aggressively. They're not aggressive creatures. Scariest giraffe I ever met was a hand-raised 3-month-old giraffe calf. Because at 3 months old, it was about the size of Brent, taller than Brent actually, and that thing was scary, because it had absolutely no natural fear of humans, and it was chasing and attacking people. I saw it chase an entire family, kids included. It was quite an interesting sight, quite a bizarre sight, an entire family sprinting down a path, followed by this really clearly quite angry young giraffe. And it just goes to show that animals, in all circumstances, if you can avoid raising them by hand, wild animals, you should. Because it usually ends badly for all parties, especially the animal. They're not like dogs and cats that we've domesticated for many generations. Just because you've raised it by hand doesn't mean it's going to be friendly. And of course that's why sanctuaries end up popping up all over the place, because people get a lion cub or a tiger cub or whatever it happens to be, or a monkey as a pet, and all of a sudden they find themselves completely unable to care for it. I don't know what happened to that giraffe. I wonder where it ended up. Its name was Melvin. No wait, what was the giraffe's name from Madagascar? Marvin? Was it Marvin?
Well, it could be.
Was it Marvin or it was Marvin? Marvin or Melvin? Why can't I remember? I keep thinking of Ross from Friends. Melvin. Either way, that was that giraffe's name. Now I can't really remember. Melman! Melman! Well done. Kirsty, well done. Melman the giraffe. Melman the giraffe was the giraffe in Madagascar, and that's what that young... That was the giraffe. I wonder whatever happened to Melman. Not the one from Madagascar. We know what happened to him. He ended up back in the wild. Hey, boy. Our FTW... That is such an adorable idea. FTW would like to know if there are any mini giraffe like there are mini horses. There aren't. They do have a relative called an okapi, which is... It looks like an antelope crossed with a giraffe. Maybe James or Tristan will be kind enough to show you a picture, because obviously I'm not carrying any books with me on the walk. An okapi's got quite a long neck, and in a way looks, I guess, like a miniature giraffe. But now I'm imagining a sort of a giraffe version of a Shetland pony. Wondering about. I don't know. The cynical side of me says give human beings another 100 years and perhaps there will be breeding programs for bonsai giraffe. I hope not. I hope all things stay as wild and big as they are. And of course the biggest of all is the elephant with James.
Bonsai giraffe is a really poor idea, I think. I think Jamie just realised that as she linked to me. There is another elephant bull, and he is much smaller than the one we had earlier. And the one we had earlier, I think, is coming towards the Gallagher waterhole, which is where we find ourselves now. Now that chap's also got his trunk sort of hooked over his tusk, so he might also be in must. But as impressive as he is, I think he's about to meet up with something a little bit more scary, although he should have been here by now. I wonder if he hasn't crossed away and gone somewhere else. He was heading directly towards the waterhole here, and we just came round. We left him on the road and came round to see if he didn't pop out. Let's sit here for a little while. I think it's going to be worthwhile. Tony, you say, is it true that the elephants have got sound receptors in their feet? Tony, I have certainly read that they are able to communicate what they call tectonically, which is a rather sort of grand way of describing how they're able to feel in their feet the vibrations that other elephants make by stamping. Now, I'm still struggling to really figure out how that's possible. I'm not saying it isn't possible, but I'm struggling to feel how, or to understand how it's possible, and also to understand the mechanism of it. I think it's just particularly sensitive nerves, nerve receptors, if you like, but I don't think it's specialized sort of hearing equipment in their ears, so they don't work anyway like the ears work, with sound that creates the vibrations in the bones, those very delicate bones that you have in your ear. So no, I don't think that occurs in elephants' feet. The sky is not pitching up for some reason. So this chap is now going to go and shake a tamboti tree. I definitely think it's worth just sitting here for another few minutes, especially as we have another elephant to look at. Anna-Marie, we get this question quite a lot, and it's an interesting one about whether or not nutrition plays a role in tusk size. And Anna-Marie, I suspect it does to a certain extent. Now, I am 5 feet and 8 inches tall, and I don't think it matters how much I don't think it would have made a difference if I'd eaten more or less as a child. I think I'd probably be in the region of 5'8" regardless. But if I had been malnourished as a child, maybe I'd only have been 5'6". So I have there's a genetic limit to how tall I can be. And I think the same goes for tusks and elephant size, and basically the size of just about any part. Well, not any part, but certainly of things like tusks. There's a genetic limit, size limit, and there's a genetic aspect to how big they're going to be. Here he comes. He's just through there. We can just see him. I don't know if you're going to pick him up there, Seb. He's just a grey shape through the bush there. But Anna-Marie, once he carries, if an elephant is malnourished as a youngster, I'm sure that the genetic potential of his tusk size could perhaps not be reached. But I think it's largely genetic, unless there was some serious nutritional problem. There he is. Well done. No, he's just sort of filtering his way gently through the bush. And I do wonder if these two bulls know that they're around each other. Dear watcher, this is a lovely question, and I mean I can get myself into quite a lot of trouble here, but I'll give it an interesting. I'll tell you my take on it. You say, is there any trouble that the elephants could wipe out the trees? Well, that has been a massive concern, of course, for a number of the landowners in the Sabi Sand, that the elephants are pushing over all their big trees. And in fact, I've heard landowners saying, the elephants are pushing over all my big trees. We need to do something about this. But of course, elephants have been pushing trees over forever and ever. And if you want to stop them pushing over trees, then you need to stop providing them with water, because then they'll go somewhere else. And I don't think that there's a danger of them wiping out all the trees. No, I don't. Do I think that this... you see, it also comes from the perspective of how many trees should they push over? Should they be pushing over fewer trees, for example? Who's to say? Because it comes from this notion that we're in some kind of pristine wilderness area that has got an ultimate state that it should be, that it's got a natural and harmonious state that it should be, and we need to manage it into that natural and harmonious state, which of course is absolute nonsense. No ecosystem remains the same for any length of time. As soon as climate changes, or as soon as there's a drought or there's a flood or something like that, the vegetation structure will change. You'll get an increase in certain species, a decrease in others, and that will in turn affect the things that they eat, and it will in turn affect the nutrients that there are in the soil. And so to say, will the elephants push all the trees over? No, I don't think they will. If we keep pumping water all over the place so that the elephants, especially in the dry season, concentrate in a place like the Sabi Sand, will they change the vegetation structure here? Yes, absolutely they will. Will they change the vegetation structure anywhere they are? Yes, for certain. Will we make their populations sustainably higher by pumping water? Yes, absolutely we will, and therefore we must expect them to push over some big trees. But the big danger in a discussion like this is to come to the conclusion that they are pushing over too many trees. What does that mean? Who says that they're pushing over too many trees? Who says that 400 years ago, before there were large numbers of people in this area, that the vegetation was either thicker or thinner, or that it was in a better or worse shape than it is now? I really quite enjoy those discussions. And in fact, I mean, one of the chaps with whom I've had many conflicting arguments, and in quite a lot of other conflict, made a very good point to me one day, because I come from a very sort of scientific training, if you like, and so you need to count all the grasses and the trees, and then you need to make a model, and then you need to assess what's going on, pick all the variables, put them in a computer, and that'll tell you how many elephants you're supposed to have in an area, and then you just get rid of the ones that you don't have. And he said to me, he said to me, "You scientists," which I mean, I'm not a scientist, but you know, I was accused of being one that day, and he said, "You scientists have done so much more damage because you don't understand the number of variables there are here." He says, "Just as valid my managing my piece of land according to the number of big trees that I want, that's just as valid as you managing it for the grass species and your scientific models, because we actually know as much as each other about what's really going on here." And I thought that was a rather good point. So I had to concede it and back down. Go and eat some humble pie. This big elephant I don't think is coming this way. Well, he will eventually, but I think he's going to feed for a while there. So we're going to just see if we can get one more view. Have you got him there?
Yeah, so he's back there.
We'll see if we can't get one more view of him before he heads into this very, very thick area where we are not going to try and follow him. And Michael, you're following on from that. I think you've got a very nice question. You say, oh, there's the whole herd. Let's maybe just wait here and see if he doesn't pop out here. Is that any good to you, Seb?
Yeah.
Michael, you say, do I ever think that we will understand the full complexity of elephant communication? I don't know. I think that we will get close if we continue to study it, but at what expense does that study come? You know, I mean, the best studies on elephant communication have been done on captive elephants, and of course as that becomes less and less acceptable, so the amount of research that we're able to do on elephant communication is going to reduce. So I don't know, Michael. I think it's a good question. I think technology will allow us to record more and more of the sounds that they make, which will allow us to interpret more and more of what they do. And so yes, I suppose we will unpack things. Will we completely understand it ever? I'm not sure. You know, and there's no scientific basis or evidence for something like this, but an animal like an elephant, I think, and many of the animals here, including lions, I think that they communicate on a level that we are not able to understand yet. I think they communicate telepathically. I don't think that's necessarily any kind of esoteric or mystical thing. I think it's just that I'm sure science would eventually be able to explain it. But I think we're a very long way away from being able to understand how that occurs. But if you consider that we have designed artificial limbs, for example, that you can operate with thought, perhaps there is some kind of way that we will be able to understand the thought patterns of animals like elephants eventually, but who knows? Here comes another one there. Now apparently while we wait and see what these elephants are going to do, Jamie has got a creature that feels a great deal of shame.
Feels a great deal of shame. Wait, let me try and work that one out. Hold on. Why would she feel... What am I missing? I'm missing something very clever here. Kirsty, any ideas? Well, perhaps it's because she's hiding away. It's because she's hiding. Got it. Okay, it wasn't as complicated as I thought it was. We've actually got a massive baboon spider. And this is her hole over here. This is where she lives during the day. And I'm not going to try and pull her out. I'm not going to fish her out. But what I'm going to do is just pop this in here. See if she'll take the bait. The strength of this particular spider is absolutely astounding. The pull on the other end of this grass, because as soon as you put it in there, then she grabs the opposite end. And the force that she's exerting, I have to actively try and pull back to try and get the grass back out. And I'm hoping, although I think with the camera she might not pop out, I was hoping she might clear this grass blade out for us, and then we might have a chance to see her. Because I'd love to know which species of a baboon spider is in here. Who knows what she is? That's her pulling back in. Hey, girl. And I'm saying girl, the adult females live in these holes. Alright, I'm going to leave her be. Pop that back out. Don't think she'll come out with us here. I say female because it's the females, the adult females, that build and live in these holes. The males will spend most of their time being completely nomadic. But it is my absolute favorite type of spider, baboon spiders. It's the South African equivalent of tarantulas, and they're called baboon spiders because they're so large and furry that they look like the hand of a baboon, apparently. That's where the name comes from. So they're exactly the same as a tarantula. They're active hunters. They're nocturnal, so they come out at night and they actively forage about. And there's certain species, like the golden baboon spider, that are so endangered and so very, very specifically endemic to the Hoedspruit area that if you do any building, you have to get an expert in to check and see that there's no homes of a golden baboon spider around, or no holes, because once that hole is destroyed, there's a very, very good chance that that's the end of that spider, because she won't come back. She won't be able to build herself another one. It grows with the spider as they get older and bigger and bigger. So you could actually, I think the fine is a lot of money. You could face jail time, and you could face a massive fine for damaging the home of a baboon spider, golden baboon spider. Completely unenforceable though. I mean, how is anyone going to know? So one thing South Africa does have is very advanced, very well thought through environmental protection laws. It's the enforcement that's the problem, but we actually have probably one of the best environmental legal structures in the world. It's just enforcing it that's the problem. There we go. We'll leave our baboon spider for now. I don't want to upset her or scare her. It is quite late in the morning, so it's not really her natural time to be wondering about. We've got one that lives in our house in Hoedspruit. It's not a golden one, though. It's a horned baboon spider. Sorry. Locked ankle. Ouch. I'm going to unlock my ankle. It's probably not a problem that James's elephants have, though.
I don't think anyone's having trouble unlocking their ankles on this side of the reserve. I'm quite interested to know how Jamie's managed to lock hers. Anyway, we're still with this now herd of elephants, waiting to see if the big bull comes down. Now, they're in a little, almost valley. It's a sort of, I suspect, an oxbow lake, an old oxbow lake formed by the drainage lines that eventually flow into the great lake that is the Vuyatela Dam. And just in front of us is a young elephant of no more than, I would say, 6 years or so. And he's just feeding as if he has no care in the world, which I suppose, if you're a 6-year-old elephant, protected by a vast herd of friendly women elephants, then, well, you don't have a care in the world. And he gave us a little bit of a head raise when he came along this way. His mother's coming this way now. I suspect she's telling him quietly through the ether that we are not to be trifled with. Now, Mr. Bean's teddy bear, and I remember Mr. Bean's teddy bear very well, of course, a small brown teddy bear, looked like it had been knitted by your grandmother. You say, how much has poaching affected elephant tusk sizes? I'm going to say almost negligibly, when you compare it with the effect of commercial elephant hunting that took place in the 19th century. I've no doubt that commercial poaching has affected it slightly, but the big tuskers were shot out by white settlers long before any kind of poaching of these animals started to affect their numbers or their tusk sizes. So yes, of course poachers will go for the biggest tusked animals that they can, but you'll find that those big tusks are few and far between these days, and that is not because of poaching. It is because of the insatiable demand for ivory that Europe created, or exhibited, if you like, when they were making pianos and furniture and all sorts of other things made from the teeth of elephants. And that was sort of I think probably from as early as the 17th century. maybe even earlier. And so as soon as Europeans landed in Africa, they started decimating the elephant populations, far more than they were ever decimated before, obviously, because the advent of firearms allowed them to do that with relative safety. Much safer shooting an elephant than trying to stab it with a spear. And although local Africans certainly did kill elephants every so often for food, I mean, you can imagine how negligible that effect must have been on their populations. And if you read the accounts of the early hunters that came into this area and down into the northern parts of Natal, which is down to the south of where we are now, it's just astonishing, and it's completely sickening when you read the numbers, sheer numbers of elephants that they left and the carcasses they left rotting in the field, simply because they'd cut the tusks out and they had no use for the meat. There weren't enough people to consume the meat. And it's quite a bugbear for me, because of course this is what has created the enormous conflict that is the space, or that is conservation space at the moment, because a lot of local people were excluded from wildlife areas, and the only reason we needed to create these wildlife areas was because the very people that created them had shot everything out. And that legacy has yet to be rectified. Here's this little thing now, about to stick its head out. There we go. Hello. Sort of get to the grass underneath, and he's now just showing us how very strong he is, aren't you? Yes. I was just saying to Seb earlier on, you know, we were talking about that elephant and how close the big bull got to us, and we were talking about trying to stay calm and how you should park the car and that sort of thing. And I said to him, well, you know, when I started guiding, you would never have had a situation like this where you were prepared to just park and let elephants walk all around you. You would just never have done that, because they were just not nearly as confiding as they are now. This elephant couldn't care less about us. It's just wonderful. Megan, you're wondering about an orphaned elephant and if it will be suckled by a different female. And it will. Elephants will adopt youngsters. So this chap, for example, a few years ago, or if that cow that you're looking at there was to come across an orphaned youngster and she was lactating, she would often take it on and nurse it. They're renowned elephants for looking after orphans. A bit like our own species, actually. We're one of the very few species that do it. One of the very sort of few, I think, pleasant traits that our own species has. Now, remember I was talking a little bit earlier about the smell. I don't know if it was to, no, it wasn't to you guys. There was he's heard something, or he smelt us, because there's a little bit of wind blowing from behind us now onto him. And look how he's suddenly, no, he's not. No, there's something that's irritating. There's a youngster, I think, probably about his own age, just below in the drainage line area here. Oh, and there's another little one. Seb, I think, about to pop its head up here. And maybe this little bully boy has decided he's not going to put up with that. Naira, we've just seen that enormous elephant bull in Must, and you're interested in whether he would cause harm to the youngsters in this herd. Naira, there was that video recently that's gone viral of a big bull in a herd tossing around a very small elephant. And I think that's unusual, but it's not impossible. And the big bull, if he gets irritated with anything, will hurt it. But it's why these herds don't like being around musk bull elephants, and it's why they become very agitated around a musk bull, and why they will spend or go to great lengths to try and protect their babies and to circle around them, because a musk bull can be a very cantankerous thing. And so I think you'll find that the behavior exhibited by elephants, where they sort of do rally around the youngsters when there's a musk bull around, I think is an indication that yes, they probably do get hurt quite frequently by musk bull elephants. And that's a trait of sort of mammals, you know, it's a trait of mammals that males are almost, well, not universally, but almost universally nasty to offspring that are not their own. And of course, if you're an elephant, it's very difficult to tell if a youngster's your own. I wonder if they ever do know. It's often, you know, there's so much about elephants that we find so human and so appealing from that point of view, that to think that an elephant bull never knows who its youngsters are is, I mean, it's almost just, it feels wrong. Natalie, you're wondering about that scene in The Lion King, of course, where Simba and Mufasa are sitting, staring out, and the little Simba points out to the west or to the south and says, "What's that over there, Dad?" Because obviously lions speak with American accents. And Mufasa says, "You must never go there, son. There is the elephant graveyard," or something to that effect. That was my James Earl Jones. I hope you enjoyed it. But they are not real. No, they are not real. Elephant graveyards do not exist. The reason that they were thought to exist is because you don't find elephant bones. There's actually don't even know where to look here. There's so many elephants. There are two little ones having a box in front of us, one to the left, two cows to the right. But that's not true. You don't find bones anywhere. You don't find a lot of bones. Eventually bones disintegrate. They're out in the elements. They will just disappear eventually. Hyenas drag them away. Lions will drag them away. And then of course elephants, when they get very old, show a propensity to moving towards river systems where the food is softer, the water is more readily available, and they will spend their last days in rivers. And they'll normally die in the rivers, and then they rot there, and their bones sink into the either thick river vegetation or into the riverbeds themselves. And there they'll disintegrate very quickly. And that's why I think the legend of the elephant graveyard came about. There was a wonderful meme that went around, it probably went around in various forms on the internet. I think that's what a meme does, doesn't it? With that Mufasa and Simba iconic picture of them looking towards the south. And there's a suburb in Johannesburg called Fourways that's sort of very new and new and nouveau, and it was a wonderful meme where Simba points down south and he says, "What's that over there, Dad?" And Mufasa says, "That is Fourways, Simba, and you must never go there." Which of course insulted everybody from Fourways. Now this elephant is about to climb into the car here, but before it does that, I believe Tristan's on Arathusa with some sort of an indication as to how his lion tracking has gone.
Well, not very good. We have not found a single track for a lion anywhere here, so it's not gone well at all. I'm not sure if anybody has more information for us as to actually which way that lion went or where it kind of crossed from, but we can't find one track going to or coming from that dam at all, so maybe it's still somewhere there and it just crossed on a hard section that we didn't pick up. But I have picked up tracks for a young female leopard, which I think could be maybe Tiani. It could also be shadow. It's about the same size for one another, but I've lost them now. It seems like they were going into one of these blocks, so I might just quickly go around on the cut line. There's a little steenbok. Hello, little guy. Well, there was a steenbok. Off it goes, bouncing into the grass, which is quite typical for them. But it looks like one of those two, and the tracks are quite fresh. It's on top of a whole bunch of elephant tracks where the dung is still very, very moist and quite warm still. So I'm hoping that she's somewhere around here. They did have a kill here the other day, Salesh and Tiani. In fact, in that marula tree just over there is where the kill was. And so I wonder if she's not just come and sniffed around here, just trying to see if there's any sign of any little scraps that might be. That's a few days ago though, so I would be surprised if she did. But maybe it's worth just checking around. And I'm trying to scan all the termite mounds and big trees, just trying to see if she's potentially in one of those. Tiani always used to like sitting on top of termite mounds. It was one of the best places to find her, is you'd scan termite mounds and you'd find her sitting there. But we'll have to just try and see. I want to just try and check the cut line to the south of us in case she crossed southwards. Now, she's not going to, unfortunately, have gone towards Buff Pan, because Buff Pan this morning is a hive of activity. There is about to be a bush breakfast that is going to take place. So the guests at Arathusa, for those of you who are not aware, they have a breakfast out in the bush, and you'll be able to see all the tables and tablecloths and varying other things in front of us as we go past them now, which is not ideal because they've also means that the chances of us finding out jackals on Arathusa airstrip are probably very slim. With the amount of people moving around and noise, you'll find that everything will move away a little bit. And fruitlessly finding anything and really just hacking away and bumbling around. James Henry's had far more luck and has got lots of elephants all around him, which should make him very happy.
I suspect that it is very much the same situation that we had yesterday, just reversed. I was on foot and finding nothing, and Tristan was with a herd of elephants, and I suspect quite strongly that these are probably the same elephants. Now, I'd love to move from here. I haven't moved since I last saw you, because there is another herd, or the other end of this herd, that is arriving now to drink at the Gallagher Pan. But because this one is so close, and because he has been so trusting and so confiding, I'm not prepared to start the engine now, because I think he'll get a fright, and I don't think that would be fair. I don't think there'd be any danger in it, but I just don't think that would be very nice of us. So as soon as he moves off, which he looks like he might fairly soon, we'll go back towards the water. In the meantime, there's another little thing over there. Old, and you're living in the United Kingdom, and I think it's wonderful that you're probably watching this just before school, are you, Zach? That's great. Yes, you would be. You'd just be having your breakfast. You probably just got up. Zach, tusks are teeth, basically, and they're used in much the same way. So they're not used to chew, but they are used to do things like pick the bark off trees. So they'll stick those tusks into the bark, and I think probably while he was still sleeping today, Tristan had an example of that, where there was an elephant digging its tusks into the bark of a tree and then pulling the bark off. So that's what that's helpful. Then they also use tusks to protect themselves from other elephants and from predators, so they can be used for defense. Here's a little one, Zach, probably about your age. He's right here next to us here. There he is. And he's got very small tusks. And they'll get bigger and bigger as he gets older. And he's not got much use for them now when he's very little. But eventually he'll use them to break off sticks, and he'll use them to chip away at bark, and if he has to, he'll use them to defend himself. Right, I think he's got far enough for... Oh, those elephants have gone already, have they?
They're there.
They're there.
I don't know if they're drinking.
Alright, let's move back a little bit. I think we can move now, because this chap's far enough away. Now, while we do that, of course, we know that elephants like to dig in the sand to get water, and so does Jamie Patterson.
That's exactly what I'm doing. I'm digging in the sand to get water. And actually, the reason that I'm doing really making my life difficult, because every time I try and get closer into the hole, I push more sand down into it. And the reason that I'm digging here is, well, it connects very well with James's elephants and the fact he's been talking about what they use their tusks for, this is what they very often use their feet for. This is where Seb and myself, and I'm pretty sure Seb is an elephant magnet, because whenever he's on the vehicle, we seem to have the most amazing elephant sightings. This is where we were when we had that really stunning elephant sighting, and I just wanted to sort of break it down into its various components, because it was such a special moment. For those of you that missed it, started with elephants drinking here, and there was a tiny baby, and then the baby got very close to us. It was very, very special sighting. But this is the hole. And it's been filled in, it's already sort of caved in, but I wanted to see how deep, isn't it sad when bad things happen to good sentences? No, I want to see how deep the elephants would have had to have dug to get to the water that's underneath the surface of the ground in the Mulwati, and I'm still going, and I'm not getting anywhere. Phew. And this is how deep how deep they would have had to have dug. Marco, you want to know how close I think I am to China? I'm getting there, Marco. Come back this afternoon on the sunset safari, and I'll be back here with one of those plastic waving cats. You know the ones I mean? The ones, the paws that do this? I'll pop one here after I've made it all the way to China. I give up. Okay, my skin on my hands is not as tough as it used to be. I've become very soft at Wild Earth. I don't have to do manual labor anymore. Oh, that's revolting, Ferg. Don't show that. I was doing this for a really good reason, and that was to see how deep that hole was, because the whole way through that sighting, female was standing here, Mum was standing here drinking, but she was having to bend right down. And even the other ones that came and drank went down onto their wrists so that they could reach down to the water that they dug up. But the whole time, every time that little elephant calf walked here, she kicked it in the face, just to move it away. And I think that hole was actually deep enough. And so obviously caved in, it's because the hippo's been walking around here, other elephants. But I think she was worried that elephant would have fallen into that hole and not been able to get out. And I think it would have been. Because headfirst into that hole, if it was as deep as it is, well, it would have been twice as deep probably to get to the water. Well, I just think it was an impressive display of elephant behavior. And speaking of impressive displays of elephant behavior, we've got one that's digging in the sand.
Yes, we actually do. He's digging in this not quite thick sand I think Jamie was digging in, but he's digging in a little patch of mud and finding some fresh water. Now it would be very easy for him and those vast number of colleagues that he has around him to just head off towards the Gallagher Pan, which is not far from here, but of course that is now stagnant water, it's not fresh. And elephants like fresh water. Now this is a young bull that we're looking at that's doing that. And there's a large herd behind him, and they sort of came walking up behind him as if to say, are you all right there with those people? And then he told them yes, no, he was fine. And so they're now moving off slightly. Oh, this is just gorgeous, isn't it? And you can also hear, of course, the irritated yelling of the crested francolino. Why it should be irritated at this time of the day, I couldn't tell you. But it's got no business being irritated. Just gorgeous, gorgeous time with these elephants. I've had many, many quiet drives of the last little while. I think we all have. And to spend time with elephants like this is just tremendous. Doesn't that sound great? Now, Jeremiah, you're wondering about the male to female ratio of elephants and whether or not it is different from 50-50. I think it's 50-50, Jeremiah. Although, obviously, it would seem that there are more females because they live in female-dominated herds. There are lots and lots of bulls living lives of bachelors on their own or with other bachelors. And then, of course, as far as the youngsters go, well, the young bulls under the age of 18 are all in the herd. Can we pop across to this tamboti tree there, Seb, that seems to be receiving a huge amount of attention from these elephants today. It's the same one that we watched that slightly smaller bull feeding on. Now that, of course, is highly toxic to human beings. I'm not sure they're actually eating it so much as standing in its shade. Huh. Oh no, sorry, that's my fault, we missed that. He just threw some mud at us. See if he does it again. Come on, do it again. I think he was irritated that I told Seb to take the camera off him. He wants to be the star. I know how he feels. Come on, do it again. Now, Seb, I'm going to pretend to give you an instruction. Seb, take the camera off this bull and put it on the other one that is under the tamboti tree. Oh no, we can't see this bull anymore. He's not being fooled at all, is he?
He's clever.
He's quite clever. But again, how peaceful they are, just is amazing. He's not drinking very clean water there. It's pretty muddy. There's a little one. There's a little one trying to muscle in just underneath. Can you see that?
Oh yeah.
It's trying to get in on the hole, and the bull's saying, "Forget it, go away. This is my hole, I dug it." I wonder if he hasn't pulled... You know what? I wonder if he hasn't discovered where the pipe is that feeds the Galago pan. I think that's what he's done. And he's probably snapped it and has created quite a lot of work for somebody to come and do. Lisa, you want to know at what stage he will leave his mum? Well, I would put him at about 14 or 15 years old, maybe even older, which means that his days in the herd are numbered. He would leave round about now, between now and I suppose up to 20, depending on conditions, but often they will be gone by the time they're 17. Maybe he's just struggling to let go of the comforts of home, the protection afforded by his mother, the old home-cooked meal. Yes, the little one is definitely sort of trying to move in there, but now struggling. Miss Sky, it's never happened to me. I've heard it happening before, and certainly there was an element of it that just happened now, but it didn't hit us. You said they throw mud at people purposely. No, I don't think they do. I suppose they could. They probably might blow the odd sort of trunk full of stuff at human beings from time to time, but it's never happened to me. But of course you were watching those monkeys earlier with Tristan, and their very close relatives, the baboons, are not shy to throw things at people, and they obviously have very powerful throwing arms. Chimpanzees do the same sort of thing. Monkeys, I don't think I've ever seen a monkey throw something at a human being before, but elephants are not great propellers of projectiles. I've definitely seen them throw things, you know, that not necessarily towards anything, but they will pick up and play with things like they'll pick up and play with rocks from time to time. think the herd has now been given a command by the matriarch to move off, and so some of them are starting to head away. Yes, Jeremiah, I would say it's a very good question you ask. Of course, you say, how long does it take an elephant in the morning before we go live to get those eyelashes in order? Well, oh, I missed that one too. That is fantastic. Jeremiah? I'm not really sure. I think it takes them probably, the bulls, we are definitely sure that with elephants, bulls take much longer than cows to get ready. They like to give the sort of impression of a rugged appearance, but in actual fact it's all just rather fake, and they spend a lot of time getting ready. The cows, well, depending on their experience, they can do their mascara and that sort of thing, in under 5 minutes, I think. Of course, if somebody's just tuned into this show, they're going to think, what is this complete imbecile talking about? And you get it, well done. Jamie Patterson apparently gave us, I'm going to let her do it when she comes to you next. She'll do it much better than I can. We had a cosmetics advert in this country for many years, probably went around the world. But I think Jamie will give a much better sort of rendition of the song. She's now, of course, cringing because I've set her up for that and she didn't want to do it. Ha ha ha. This is just great. Let's see if he throws it again. See if he throws it once more, and then we'll move on and see what else we can find. Come on, elephant. Don't let me down. No. Very unentertaining drinking that one. They do, of course, if you just go behind there, there's one now fighting with a stick. And now, to the right-hand side is going a cow, and she seems to be perhaps going to have a drink. See what she does. She's taking one or two others with her, and she's looking a little bit alarmed. You see her ears held out like that? I wonder if we shouldn't just go around the corner there to see if there isn't something that she's being alarmed by. While we do that, Jamie Patterson is now going to sing to you a cosmetics advertisement.
Oh, I was going to, but the setup that we had was so perfect, and now it's not so perfect anymore. I was going to talk about, because of course, of all of the creatures out here, giraffe and elephant are the ones with the loveliest eyelashes, and I was going to say maybe she's born with it, and maybe it's Maybelline. The best laid plans of mice and men. And giraffe. Oh, girls, you were in such a good setup. It was so perfect. Impala are panicking them. It's the same herd that we saw yesterday evening at the end of this. Gosh, was that yesterday? It was yesterday, Fergus. It seems like about a week ago. At the end of the sunset safari yesterday. I wonder how long it takes a giraffe to do their eyelashes in the morning. Probably even longer than an elephant. Can you imagine? Because their legs aren't going to be able to reach up to their eyes. Must be very tricky to do. Maybe they find a convenient thorn tree somewhere and straighten out all of the tangled eyelashes first thing in the morning. There's a reason, of course. Oh, there's 4 of them. Not 3, but 4. There's a young one there as well. There's a reason, of course, apart from the sheer beauty of it, that giraffe have such beautiful long eyelashes, as do elephant, and that's to protect their eyes, which I'm sure James has mentioned. But when you feed off trees in the way that these animals do, being able to protect the very, very sensitive surface of the eye from a thorn is essential. So having long eyelashes that will automatically close the eye as soon as they detect any kind of impact on them is a very important thing indeed. Don't you think it's weird? Not weird, weird's not the right word. But don't you think it's amazing how we go through stages where we don't see giraffe and we don't see elephant, and now we see both? They're so sweet, all of them standing staring at us. I think what we're probably going to do is try and sit down somewhere and wait for them to come up to us. Hello, Raffies. My mom's second favorite animal after elephants. I'm still intent and quite alert. Yesterday on the sunset safari, there was one skittish female that kept getting a fright, and every time she got a fright, she moved and the rest of the herd went with her. I wonder if this herd doesn't have the pregnant female with them. There's one female on Djuma somewhere. I don't know if she's still on Djuma, but there was one female on Djuma who was so pregnant. She was bulging. I think the process of labor is not far off. What will happen if I sit down? I think I'm still too visible. I need to find a bush to hide behind, and that will provoke their curiosity. Especially because I think they're far more likely to be looking at the large white antenna that's sticking out of Ferg than they are at me. Hello, ladies. Ferg, I think you can come if you want to come this way. Let's see how it goes. I don't want to approach them too much in the thicket, because then they will run. I want them to be able to see us, because if they think we're trying to stalk them, then they are going to get a fright. Hello. But the reason I went around in a circle like that... Oh, it's okay, girls. It's okay. There we go. See? All is fine. And the reason that I went around in a circle was just because it's always better to approach an animal obliquely than to go straight at them. So walking straight at any animal, or driving straight at any animal, has a negative effect in that they then think you're directly approaching them. So if you're approaching an animal, letting it come to you is always best, or taking just a slightly curved angle so that it's not you walking straight at them. And off they go. There's another vehicle on its way through here, which I think has also spooked them a little bit. Shame. I'm not going to push it. I don't want them to be scared. I saw these elephants the other day and I didn't manage to get them on camera, so I'm really excited because James has found a very special elephant herd.
Now that is not the special herd of which we are speaking. The one who I'm speaking about is now currently drinking from this particularly unpicturesque waterhole, and it's what we used to call the half-trunk herd, or I used to call the half-trunk herd, and that's our matriarch there with the bottom third of her trunk missing. Her little baby I don't think I've seen for 6 months, and has grown quite a lot. So probably now I would say about 2, maybe not quite, maybe 18 months old or so. And the second largest one, who I think is a sibling, I don't think it's a daughter of hers or offspring of hers, is almost the same size now as the little matriarch. And then of course I think that the other one, the one in the middle there, I think is the matriarch's first youngster. How very cool to see them. Rita, you're wondering about what happens when the matriarch of a herd dies. Well, you'll find that the next oldest, biggest, or most experienced female will then take over. She will then assume command. And this is a very young herd. That is a young elephant to be a matriarch. She's probably about 24 or 5, I guess. And so for her to be the matriarch of a herd is quite unusual. Isn't that nice? Now, these are some of our favorite. Many of you wouldn't have actually met these elephants yet. They're our favorite herd for many, many months. And we didn't see them, and then they just disappeared, because that's what elephants do. They move huge distances. Got an interesting bird there as well, Seb. I don't know if you can see it knocking about. There's a pied wagtail, which some of you might not have on your bird list. Next, please excuse that plastic. It is the waterproofing that is underneath, just to the left there. There you are. It's just the waterproofing underneath this pan. That's quite cool, pied wagtail. Now, Stax, you've seen oxpeckers obviously, and you've seen various other creatures out here, and I've made mention of, for example, the impala and the starlings today, and you're saying, are there any birds that live in symbiosis with elephants? I'm not sure that there's a symbiotic relationship necessarily, but there are definitely birds that will follow elephants, those drongos. You'll find things like wattled starlings following elephants, definitely, and that's because they want to pick up whatever gets unearthed when they pull out grass tufts and, grubs and beetles and other invertebrates will come up with those. And then at the same time, they will also, as they move, they'll kick up grasshoppers and that sort of thing. So I don't know that it's symbiotic, because I don't think the elephants necessarily get anything from that. They will get a sort of early warning, I suppose, if it's required, but elephants are generally too big for anything to kill, so yeah, I don't think it's really symbiotic. This is very special to see them again after so long. One does wonder what brings the elephants in here. Why have they suddenly come back? And why not just one herd, but many herds? And I'm trying to remember the first time I saw this herd that you're looking at now. It was during TV rehearsals, and Brian and I spent a long time with them, and I wonder, I think it was round about the same time of year, I can't remember exactly. This time of year in 2016. Yeah. Must have been somewhere around then. But who can be sure? I don't know. That is fantastic. And Zach, you're aged 7, and no doubt you've either got to go to school soon, or maybe you've just come back from school. You say, how did that elephant lose her trunk? Zach, we're not sure. It could have been something like a crocodile when she was very little, but I think that you'll probably find, unfortunately, that it was a snare from a poacher. Now, that's not necessarily to say that the poacher tried to do that, or that the poacher's a bad person. The poacher would probably have been trying to catch something to eat for his family, and unfortunately the elephant would have got caught in the snare. And I'm going to ask your mum and dad to explain to you what a snare is, because it's much easier to actually draw it or show it to you. But basically it's a piece of wire that would have been used to try and catch an animal, and it would have caught that elephant by the trunk by mistake. And eventually it would have got so tight around her that it would have cut off the blood flow, and that in turn would have resulted in the bottom part of the trunk falling off, and that would have been very, very painful indeed, Zach. But you can see she's fine now. She's absolutely fine. She's got her little family. She's kept them safe for at least a year. And so everything is all right in her little herd. Now, there's something interesting happening here. There's a young cow moving up to have a drink with them. Now, she's not part of this herd. Now, watch how our matriarch, our little half-trunk matriarch, lifted her head up, opened her ears. They're having a greeting ceremony. Now, whether it's friendly or not, I don't know, but look, this other cow is walking around almost to say hi. There's no aggression there, but there's a wariness. They don't know each other well, clearly. This is absolutely fascinating. And Blue Butterfrog, from whom we have not heard for some time, you say you were wondering if they were going to be aggressive to each other. Unless there's some kind of competition for resources, I don't think there will be. But to me, that cow that's just walked over has walked over and is using the water as an excuse. She's not drinking. She's just letting the water fall out of her trunk now. And I think she's saying hi. I think she wanted to come over and say hello to these other elephants. Doesn't know them. She's a young cow. She's bored of being in the same herd all the time, listening to the same nonsense and bravado from the bulls in her herd. Now she's come over to chat to an elephant who's roughly the same age as her, and that's what's going on here. Now, I don't know what they're saying to each other, but isn't that cool? Is that a protective trunk over the head there? Oh, maybe it's not very friendly. Maybe old half-trunk lady's saying, listen, we're an independent family, we don't necessarily want to have new friends.
Go and find me on Facebook.
Go and find me on Facebook, sis. But okay, this is quite interesting. That greeting ceremony there, where she presented her backside and then there was a sort of sniffing of the genitals, although we know that happens a lot in the animal world. But elephants will often put their trunks in each other's mouths. And that hasn't happened here. Now, we were chatting earlier about whether or not we will ever fully understand elephant communication. I would love to know what's going on here. Now watch the matriarch, because the stranger is now going round towards her smallest one. And I think that the matriarch is very weary of her. There's no aggression being shown, but there's definitely a weariness. Look, the second youngest is pushing towards the stranger and pushing the baby towards the stranger. The baby's now feeling, I think, this is purely anthropomorphic interpretation of what's going on here. I might be talking absolute rubbish. The little baby has now put its trunk into its older sibling's mouth, and they do that if they're feeling uncomfortable. So she's feeling shy of the stranger, so she's looking for security. So she's just saying to brother or sister, hang on a second, I'm not that comfortable now, I'm just going to go back to mum. And the other one is not shy. That is so cool. Flinging some water at the stranger, saying, you're probably close enough, thank you. It's interesting also, of course, because we hear that elephants have to eat, constantly to survive, and we assume, therefore, that they must be sleeping when they're not eating. I think that their social structure is so complicated that you'll find a huge amount of time is spent doing exactly this, interacting socially and trying to figure out what's going on. Yeah, Michael, that's a good question, and I don't know the answer to it. You say, why is her herd so small? I don't know. She must have split off from a bigger herd at some stage. Look, here comes this precocious youngster. Look! Michael, I wonder if it isn't because she's slightly antisocial. We've seen her blowing water at a potential friend. I don't know. Maybe it's had something to do with her injury. Maybe she was abandoned and managed to grow up sort of on her own. On Aqua, you were wondering if she didn't perhaps split from a larger herd because of her injury. I'd say it's quite possible. This is very, very, very special to watch. Now, everybody except the matriarch is coming to make friends with the new cow. almost certainly a conversation going on here that we cannot hear or understand. There's more genital sniffing going on there. I cringe every time I say the term genital sniffing. It's really quite foul term, but that's what's going on. Yep, and again, now the very little one is doing the same thing, is smelling underneath, taking the lead from the precocious one. And our mum's kind of left on her own, thinking, oh, just be careful there. I don't think Mum's drinking either. And that trunk on the ground there, I don't know, it just looks to me like they're talking to each other. There's more genital sniffing going on. Look at how the little one is now totally comfortable. X-Ringer, you're saying would there be info from the scent? Almost certainly. Almost certainly they can smell. I wonder if they might be related. It's quite possible that that is a distant cousin or aunt. And I wonder if there isn't. I'm sure there's some kind of information or familial information from the smell. But I'll tell you what else is interesting. I don't think that the stranger cow, I don't think that she's lactating. I don't think, which is unusual to find a cow that isn't lactating. And I wonder if she doesn't have a calf at the moment. I was about to say she doesn't have a calf at the moment until this has happened. Look at this. And I wonder if that isn't her calf, maybe. Oh, this is wonderful. Look at them, two little ones saying hello to each other. Now, they might not be strangers, you know. It might be, you know, there are a lot of elephants around here. It might be that that half-trunk herd has been in and around this much bigger herd for some time now. And that actually those two youngsters do know each other. And they do know this unrelated female. But what I was going to say before I saw the second calf is that it doesn't look to me like that stranger female was lactating. And I wondered if there wasn't some reason therefore that she wanted to come and, I don't know, make friends with youngsters. She might not be a mother herself. Again, all of this is massive leaps of logic and massive anthropomorphization, which of course we do a lot on this show and we quite enjoy it. But it doesn't mean that it's necessarily true. And dear watchers, we watch that little thing that seems to be almost completely unable to use its trunk. You say, oh, can they use their trunks when they're born? They can absolutely not use their trunks when they're born, dear watcher. They're really... Oh, there's another herd coming. This is unbelievable. Dear watcher, no, their trunks are useless when they're born. It's such a complicated array of muscle fibers and nerves that it takes them about 2 years to learn to use fully. And you were watching there the older, or the stranger cows, or what I'm calling her now, the concertina effect that the trunk has, and it will flop down onto the ground. A young elephant can't do that because they would almost certainly stand on their trunks. Look at this. Look, the little ones coming to say hi to each other. Now this is a big cow. That is a much bigger cow. She's a good, I'd say 5 or 10 years older than our half-trunk matriarch and the stranger. And here's another bit irritated cow. She's almost like the enforcer, sort of. And yeah, so you're looking now. I don't want to move the car, obviously. That's very strange behavior because no one else has been vaguely irritated by us at all, only her. Now, there, second from the end, is our half-trunk cow. There's her. Her herd is still drinking from the water hole, but she's moved off as that big cow came in. But the rest of her herd is now saying hi to all their new friends. Now they're moving off with her. As is the young cow that came in as a stranger. Now we've got the sitting down. I don't know what's going on here. It's all become completely impossible to interpret. Now look, this little cow going up to this aggressive, nasty one to say hi. Look how she's calmed. Look how she's become totally becalmed by that little calf. That's astonishing. Now the half-trunk cow is moving off behind us. I'm sorry I'm not moving the car. I'm sorry everything's in the way, but it's difficult. I don't want to start the car now. Nikki, you say, do elephants ever switch herds? I'm sure they must. I mean, the textbooks will tell you they don't, but I'm sure they must do. Now this, to me, if I'm going to anthropomorphize it further, which I may as well do, as I've been doing it for the whole morning, it looks to me like that half-trunk cow has said, come guys, let's get out of here now. There's too much activity. You know, we're our little group of 4. Let's just go off on our own. And the others are saying, no, but we want to stay and play with the new ones, and we're bored of just us. 2 of them are now following her. And there's the third, I think now we're looking at this one. No, that's absolutely fine. I didn't see that was going on. That is ridiculous. This is just fantastic. And of course, elephants are difficult to identify unless you know them really, really well. They don't have obvious distinguishing features. Now, I think that one, you're walking there, I think that one is the oldest one from the half-trunk herd. Now the half-trunk matriarch has gone off down the road. Her youngest calf, you can't see, is now that one there. It's now digging in that hole that the bull was digging in earlier. And next, Rangi, you say that this is like a water cooler moment. It is rather like a water cooler moment, I suppose. But this is, I mean, they're complete strangers. It's much more to me like a meeting of families at a pool at an enormous resort, where nobody really knows what's going on. The kids start playing with each other, and the adults don't. Apparently there's also a massive herd of elephants now at the Djuma Dam. So you can check that out on the dam cam. Oh no, I don't know what's going on here now. I'm completely flummoxed. Half-trunk has moved off down the road. Her youngest calf has forsaken her. The oldest calf is knocking about with the teenagers over here. It's exactly like kids at a resort. The parents want to keep their families together. They only talk with their friends. But the kids somehow muddle in with each other and start having a good time. Oop. This is just brilliant. Look at all those trunks. And there, Seb, there's the little one from the half-trunk herd. Or stay there, that's fine. Yeah, let's play with those one. There's the trunk, or putting their trunks in each other's mouths. You can see that. And they're all about the same age, just exactly as it would be if you went to a, as I was told, a public swimming pool somewhere. Kids of the same age will eventually congregate towards each other. Mr. Bean's teddy bear, I'm not sure about the answer to this, but you say, how much of their communication is below the frequency that we can hear. I don't know. Yet, Seb, these two youngsters are now playing with each other. One of these is the half-trunk herd's youngest cow, and she's playing with a friend. Mr. Bean's teddy bear, I don't know. I think quite a lot of their communication must be either below our hearing or certainly beyond our understanding, because there's obviously a huge amount of communication going on here. Here we go, perhaps going off back to Mum. There's a huge, I mean, there are thousands, not thousands, but there are at least 10 or 12 conversations going on between different groups of elephants here. There you can see the one that Seb's got you now. Those three there together with the two that are having a little bit of a fight. They're all the same age. Look at them. This is real playtime. I wonder if it isn't sort of some elephant holiday season at the moment. And we must, of course, sit down on our bottoms, because that's what we do when we're by the pool. Mr. Zero, you say, do elephants show affection or kiss with their trunks? I'm not sure that that's how I describe. Yeah, well, it's definitely affection. Is it kissing? Ooh, I mean, I don't know. But that sort of trunk in the mouth is absolutely affection, and it's a way of saying, you know, I'm cool, I'm fine, I'm a friend. This is just astonishing. Look at those youngsters together there. Starting to get a bit warmer now, and so the wind's starting to come up. Lara, I think they do, but I'm not sure that it's as conscious as it is with human beings. You say, do elephant cows ever use other cows as babysitters? All the time. But I think it's done almost by default. So elephants will look after each other's babies all the time. And so I don't think they're necessarily assigned the job, but all elephants in the herd will look after the little ones. Yes, this is marvellous, marvellous stuff. And those funny little things there. And here comes one about to sort of through the frame. There's a huge amount of screeching going on. And not a lot of eating. So, I mean, we talk constantly about how elephants are constantly needing to feed, and there's zero feeding going on here. There's a little bit of drinking, there's a huge amount of playing, there's some loafing about the place, there's some sort of checking out what the humans want. Right, I believe that the morning has become a little bit like, for some of these elephants, rather too much for Jamie Patterson.
It has indeed. Oh, the time change means that it gets quite warm around about the last half an hour of drive, and I figured, well, since James has been having such an amazing sighting with those elephants, I might just decide to take it easy. Besides, we got home quicker than we thought we were going to, because we had to race past those elephants that are at Weyatela Dam. I'm probably going to sit up now, so I feel a bit awkward. There we go. Now, there's a whole herd of elephants just behind me at the WildEarthTV Dam, and I really didn't want to go walking into them today. There's just so many elephants around that it makes the situation very unpredictable. So Herbie, Fergus and myself snuck all the way around. We saw them, but they did not see us, but also with the wind that's blowing this morning. The wind is doing this, and it was blowing our scent straight at them. So I decided, instead of staying and viewing the elephants on foot, I decided we'd come and sit in the shade instead, and sort of end off with the flower that we started with. I'm not singing maybe she's born with it, maybe it's Maybelline. I'm not doing it. It's not happening. I refuse to provide free advertising. Also, I don't think I can hit that pitch. I'm not singing it. I'm not. Maybe James will sing it for you. I am not singing. I can't. I've got a cough. I just can't do it. There's no way. Alright, let's go across to James's sunrise safari this morning.
Yes, well, here we are. I'm not singing anything about eyeshadow and women's makeup or men's makeup either, because Jamie said she would. She didn't really, she just mentioned it, so it's up to her. I think we'll enjoy these elephants rather than the advertisements for people who make things that tell people that they aren't good enough as they are. There are elephants screaming down in the drainage line that leads to the WildEarthTV Dam. And this scene has just turned very, very peaceful indeed. All the friends are lurking and having a snooze. Adele in the UK, you're wondering about my best elephant encounter. Well, I mean, this has got to be pretty close to it. I don't know, Adele. I'm not sure that there's one that sticks out in my mind, except the very first ones I had on foot. You know, those really do stick in my mind. They are obviously, because they were fresh and new, and because I was so clueless and because I was so terrified, I think finding those first few elephant sightings on foot for me would probably be the ones that stick out in my mind the most strongly. Look at this one getting up now. We really have been lucky beyond measure today. Chloe, you're wondering about sunburn and whether elephants can get it. I don't think they can. They have grey skin. That grey skin is born or is created by melanin, and melanin, as we know, is very good at reflecting the sun. An albino elephant born without melanin would be plain white and would almost certainly get very sunburned. Excuse me 1 second. I just had to clear a foam nest frog out of my throat. And as in every group of teenagers, there are two that like to horse around and one that likes to lie on the ground doing absolutely nothing. And the little one just getting a kick for his troubles, trying to check how the teenager's doing. Not interested. Get up, you lazy lump. Aqua, you're wondering if the short-trunked calf will be able to relocate her mother? Yeah, no, almost certainly. They will recognize each other's calls, they'll recognize the tone of each other's voices, and almost certainly that herd will join up. Like I say, I mean, they could have been in amongst this big group of elephants for some time now, and they might know them all quite well. I mean, that truly is a fantastic scene there, underneath the tamboti tree. Careful, you're going to trip over your lazy mate, who won't get up off the ground. It's now sort of swinging about the place, thinking, oh, life's just too much for me right now. Yeah. I think these guys are about 12 maybe, 12 years old, 10 maybe. David, you say, is that elephant playing dead for attention? No, I think it's playing asleep because it's lazy. It's time of day for resting and playing. It often happens around about this time of the day that youngsters will lie down and have a bit of a snooze. The adults will stop moving and sort of stand in the shade for a bit after they've had a bit of a drink. So no, I think it's purely just having a rest. Maybe it doesn't feel so well. Maybe it's feeling a little peaky and then having a bit of a snooze. But no, I think it's definitely not playing dead for attention. Well, I say that. I mean, I've anthropomorphized everything else today. Why not? Maybe it's feeling left out, and maybe it thinks if it lies down on the ground and pretends that it's ill, others will come and give it some attention. This youngster is now tired of his friends having all the attention, or her friends. I think it's a young cow. Very difficult to tell at this age, of course. Very, very special morning we've had. That banging, by the way, in the background is a building site at the camp, so I'm sorry about that, but you know, maintenance must be done from time to time. I'll have a last look at these chaps having their drink. Their morning coffee, which of course is what I'm about to do. Right, everyone, that is going to be it from this end of the sunrise safari, and it was a wonderful sunrise safari. Started off in a very dodgy fashion, but ended rather well. Just remember, there's no change to the afternoon drive time, so we still the changes until we start going into the summer, which of course will be in about 2 months. So thank you very much for coming along on our drive. We will see you this afternoon at 3 o'clock. Until then, bye-bye.